For more on this topic, we're joined with British investigative journalist Tony Gosling. So Britain's armed forces chief says NATO must intensify its attacks on Libya, targeting Gaddafi's infrastructure. Do you think the UK's focus is more aligned to killing Gaddafi rather than bringing him to court?
Well, I'm flabbergasted by this announcement because actually this is a political decision. It should never be a military decision. I think the reason that the military chief has announced it is really to save the face of our politicians here in Britain, who are pushing this whole matter way beyond what was agreed at the United Nations Security Council. That is a serious problem, and this is why the Russians and others are now saying there must be a ceasefire. Actually, a ceasefire exactly is what everybody around the rest of the world is calling for. So why is it that the British military are deciding to up the ante against Gaddafi? Of course, if they decide they want to bomb the infrastructure, this is, I would consider, a war crime under the present situation, and it goes way outside the present UN resolution. Why is it, we have to ask ourselves, that the British and NATO particularly, this is a NATO initiative now, have decided that they want to intervene so heavily in this civil war, rather than let the Libyan people decide for themselves the outcome of how they want the politics in their country to be in the future?
Now, Britain's defense secretary says NATO is prepared for a lengthy campaign in Libya. Do you think Russia's efforts can bring both Gaddafi's regime and the rebels to a real ceasefire while NATO tries to bomb one side into submission? I mean, before, Gaddafi has said that he wants a ceasefire, and then it turns out it doesn't happen. So do you think this next step in Russia can work?
Well, I do hope so, but the idea that they are prepared for a long campaign, I think that's actually what they want. NATO has shown in other campaigns around the world that it starts off with this sort of pretense that they want to have a short, sharp war, and what happens is it turns into a long, protracted war where actually who does run out of this? The military-industrial complex, these massive military companies who are supplying all this weaponry to NATO, are the people who do best out of it. And in fact, both sides, military companies from both sides do well. So I think I don't think that the NATO side really want to make this a short thing at all. They actually would like a long, protracted conflict, and they would like ultimately to take control of Libya's oil and Libya's finances, which is what this.
Well, I think it's a number of different issues. I mean, one, it goes to training, but quite honestly, police officers in the United States receive, thousands of hours of training. Unfortunately, what happens, though, is they go from training and then they go on the street, and they're often working with other officers or sergeants that tell them, forget what you learned in the academy, this is how we do it in the street. And unfortunately, they adopt a mentality which is the ends justify the means. They believe they're pursuing bad guys, and so they don't feel they have to abide by all the laws when they're chasing them. I think it's fairly widespread because you have a culture that looks the other way when police engage in conduct that other officers know is wrong. They don't intervene to stop it. I don't know that you can place a number on it, but what these video surveillance cases are showing us is that in every instance, and we don't have that many of them, probably less than 12, but every instance where we can match up a videotape to a police report, we have found the police report to be dishonest. The only way we're going to stop it is if police are prosecuted for misconduct when they're caught stealing, lying, and engaging in violent assault. I think, though, the other step is that we have to require any police officer who witnesses misconduct of any kind, require them to report it or also be subject to losing their jobs for not reporting that conduct if it's found to have taken.
Hello everyone, welcome to Global Government News. Today is Friday, May 20th, 2011, and I'm Darko. This is part 4, the final part for today. My website is www.ggnonline.com. That's ggnonline.com. And we're going to move forward here. Plenty of news left here in this final video. Fighting terrorism and nuclear safety was pledged by the G20 parliamentary leaders in Seoul, South Korea on Friday. You can check that out. Links will be posted in the video's description on YouTube. So ACLU, National Defense Authorization Act, permits worldwide war without end. Little notice provision in the House Armed Service Committee's National Defense Authorization Act would authorize the U.S. to use military force anywhere there are terrorist suspects, including within the United States itself, according to the American Civil Liberties Union, ACLU. Congress to authorize perpetual war with no enemies and no end. It says here, after 9/11 attacks, President George W. Bush, Congress committed the nation to a global war on terror, which for perhaps the first time in history, the nation launched a military campaign that was aimed more against fighting an ideology rather than an army. So, as of today, 10 years later, the U.S. finds itself engaged in the same kind of perpetual state of war that author George Orwell warned against in his novel 1984. In the book, there was a state of Oceania is at a perpetual state of war with Eurasia and East Asia. Today, the U.S. fights global terror. So France steps up security measures ahead of G8 summit. That ought to be interesting. I'm sure there'll be plenty of videos of cops pepper spraying and using sound cannons and tear gas and just the good old-fashioned tasers and beat sticks. France has pledged tough security measures. Oh, I'm sure they have. To guarantee the safety of participants, the safety of sellout pig politicians. That's pretty much all you need to call them. So, sovereign citizens, anti-government group. I always love how they always have this security, as if these are so important, vital people, like as if they die or something happens to them, they're not going to be able to fill the role. You know, they're not going to be able to find another person who's going to sell their soul, right? No, of course you will. You'll find them easily. So it's here. I mean, that's why I'm against government. So I'm against statism. Sovereign citizens, anti-government group files liens. Some embrace violence. So FBI considers them one of the nation's top domestic terror threats. Their members include cop killers and convicted Oklahoma City bomber who was also what? A patsy. They call him for what? A false flag terrorist attack. To what? Take down militias in the United States and patriots. They call themselves sovereign citizens. And some people call them freemen, and have taken various measures to fight the U.S. government, but now the government is fighting back. So, and of course, they're loosely organized because they don't believe in a democracy, most of them. And it says here, estimates that there are about 300,000 sovereign citizens in the U.S. They pose taxes and make their own license plates. So, and you can check that out. It's a good little propaganda piece there. 84-year-old man allegedly beaten by a police officer after calling 9/11. And it says here, an Alabama police officer allegedly hospitalized an elderly man who called 911 to report an accident across the street from his house while his wife watched the entire beating from a wheelchair. So there you go. 84-year-old Dorsey Henderson of Fairhope, Alabama, called 911 after investigating the car accident and discovering that the driver of the vehicle was severely intoxicated. So go in there, you can read the rest of the story. Obama hints at a shift on Syria. His speech indicates the U.S. no longer sees keeping Bashar Assad in power as necessary to Syrian stability. So regime change, just like Libya. There we go. Like I said, they were on the docket for the new American century. The project for the new American century, Syria, you gotta go. And along with Iran. Syria accuses Obama of meddling in its affairs. Syrian government is accusing President Bolsonaro of meddling in its internal affairs. Syria decries U.S. sanctions, claim they serve Israel. So go on there and check that out. Next up, Hamas in Gaza end Zionist project in Palestine. Hamas leader affirmed the group's hardline principles in a speech to thousands of Muslim worshippers Sunday as it commemorated the uprooting of Palestinians during the 1948 war over Israel's creation. So, Gaza group rejects U.S. terror classification decision. Gaza-based extremist group on Friday rejected a recent U.S. decision that labeled it was a foreign terrorist group. Quote, "We completely reject this decision and consider it unfair," said the spokesman. Moving on here, we have Obama's new approach to Israeli-Palestinian peace talks leads nowhere. Then next up, Palestinian sees prospects of deal receding. Obama calls for 1967 Israeli-Palestinian border debate. And then we have this: we won't accept U.S. border plan, says Israel. Netanyahu and Obama's contiguous Palestinian state could, quote, split Israel in half, says Middle East expert, and there's a good chance of that. And, you know, I think that they want to. I think they want to do that because I think that this whole end time scenario will be carried out. It'll be simulated by the powers that be, and that includes like a big kind of a nuclear holocaust there between those two countries. So they have to actually cause it to happen. Obama's speech, best gift to Netanyahu, so said, I think Obama's speech was the best present and gift that Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu could have possibly expected under these circumstances as he arrived in Washington. So, and moving on, Israel pushing Obama into war with Iran. The Israeli lobby in the U.S. is pushing President Barroso Toro to go to war with Iran and the Middle East countries. And it says, need to be on guard about this plot, says a political analysis. Israeli troops shoot Gazan protesters, and Russia expels Israel's military attaché over espionage claims. And European Student Union boycotts Israel. Then we have Medvedev warns West of new Cold War over missile deal. And I believe he's referring to somewhere in Eastern Europe. So here we go. Russia calls on UNAU to use peacekeeping potential to resolve Libyan crisis. We saw that in that video. Russia's basically telling them to back off Libya as NATO claims progress in Libya. A U.S. deadline is put to the test. Then we have fears mount over Libya ground invasion. There's a video you might want to check out. Link will be posted. Pakistan seeks investment lift. And then we have more Chinese investment in Pakistan, especially in the energy, infrastructure, and agriculture technology sectors, will help lift the nation's economy to a new high, Pakistanis leaders said. So China gives Pakistan 50 fighter jets, and China asks the U.S. to respect Pakistani sovereignty and independence. Unauthorized U.S. strike kills 6 in Pakistan, and U.S. consulate cars attacked in Pakistan. 1 person has been killed, and at least 11 others, including 2 Americans, injured as a roadside bomb targeting U.S. consulate vehicles went off in Pakistan's northwest city of Peshawar. Taliban attacked U.S. vehicles in Pakistan. Armored vehicles. I don't believe it was a convoy because, like I said before, the NATO doesn't pay off the Taliban, so they usually get their cargo, their transport tankers, and that attacked by the Taliban. But the U.S. doesn't because they actually pay them to not attack them. Pakistan probe, I don't think that's going to continue. We'll see, though. Pakistan probe into killings of 5 unarmed foreigners, and this is just really a bunch of crap. And human rights workers say security forces in Pakistan are rarely held to account for unlawful killings. Unauthorized U.S. strike kills 6 in Pakistan. Human rights workers say security forces in Pakistan are rarely held to account for unlawful killings. Unauthorized U.S. strike kills 6 in Pakistan. It's just like I said, it's pure BS. And it's propaganda, so that's what you expect from the British government's propaganda machine, the BBC. Beijing's top general says U.S. overstates China threat. It says here, China's top military officer warned that America's tendency to, quote, hype the threat from Beijing could thwart better U.S.-Chinese military relations. Then U.S. troop morale in Afghanistan plunges, says Pentagon. So what do? 450 troops to withdraw from Afghanistan. Talking about Britain, U.S. warns Britain against Afghan pullout and Afghan civilians killed in NATO attacks. Gillard support tumbles in Queensland. Then we have Britain steps up pressure on Press TV. Why? British government has unleashed a new wave of pressure on Press TV and a new latest example of infringement on freedom of speech. You need to be watching what's developing in Spain right now. It says protests have been raging in Spain since Sunday, May 15th. The one we've been seeing pictures of in Madrid and the famous Puerto del Sol. But there were protests in 60 different locations on Sunday, and they're still raging in different parts of the country. About 2,000 young people, angry over high unemployment, have spent the night camping in a famous square in Madrid as political protest there grows. And I'm sure there's many reasons why they're out there protesting. Many different age groups for many different reasons, but they always like to put people in a box. Sorry about that. And you know, this is what they're trying to do. Echoes Egypt protests, which were what? They weren't grassroots. A lot of them, dude. I mean, yeah, some of them were initially because of the what? Because of unemployment, which was really just rising food and fuel prices. That's why they were. And then they came in with the CIA, color revolutions and all that, and basically backing it. And so they got what they want. Why? So they can go in there and do regime change. Riddle of God particle could be solved by 2012, says CERN. A new method confirms dark energy, and it turns out some planets don't have a sun. So secret societies' wild animal acts cannot be banned from British circuses because of human rights laws. Thank you, everybody.